What do you do when the happiest day of your life suddenly becomes a nightmare? Anya stood there, radiant in her wedding gown, ready to embrace a dream come true. But her perfect day shattered when her mother-in-law accused her of disrespect and contempt. In an instant, her world turned upside down. As Preston stood by, confused at first, the truth came out. His mother's manipulations and his violent reaction. The room went silent as Anya realized the man she had just married was capable of this. Stay tuned to see how Anya takes control of her life, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of strength and courage. Laughter and melodies filled the air, a symphony of joy that should have marked the happiest day of my life. I'm Anya, and as I stood there in my elegant white gown, feeling like royalty, everything seemed perfect. It was a dream, one I'd longed for, until in an instant it all came crashing down. "Anya, dear, could you come here for a moment?" My mother-in-law's voice cut through the music, sharp and almost commanding. I forced a smile at my friend, excused myself, and made my way toward her. The stiffness in her posture was impossible to ignore. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and the tension in the air felt suffocating. "What is it, Mrs. Brown?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, my smile polite, but I couldn't shake the unease that had suddenly settled in. "It's about the way you look at me, Anya," she said, her tone colder than I'd ever heard. "I know contempt when I see it, and you have it all over your face. I am your husband's mother, and I deserve respect, not this disdain." Her words hit me like a slap, my mind racing to make sense of what she was accusing me of. "Mrs. Brown, I think you've misunderstood." "I have nothing but respect for you," I said, my voice trembling slightly as confusion flooded me. "Respect? Ha!" she scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "I see the way you roll your eyes at me, the sighs when I speak. You think I don't notice? You've even turned my son against me." Her voice rose, growing louder with each word. I could feel the eyes of the guests beginning to turn in our direction, the room growing heavier with the attention. I fought to keep my composure, but her words were like daggers. Before I could respond, Preston appeared at my side, his brow furrowed with concern. "Mom, what's going on here?" he asked, looking between the two of us, his voice laced with confusion. "Your wife, Preston, she's been nothing but disrespectful to me," Mrs. Brown said, her voice trembling with emotion, her hands clutching Preston's arm. "She looks down on me, and today of all days, she's been the worst." Her tears started to fall, staining her cheeks as she pulled him closer, the drama escalating for everyone to see. "Anya, is this true?" Preston asked, his face shifting from confusion to disbelief, his gaze searching mine. His question cut through the tension, and I felt my heart sink as I prepared to answer. "No, it's not true," I replied, my voice firm but steady. "I've done nothing to disrespect her. She's lying." "Preston, I'm your mother. Would I lie to you?" Mrs. Brown cried out, her grip tightening on his arm. Tears streamed down her face, the drama thickening in the air. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The room seemed to disappear around me as I watched Preston's face shift from concern to something darker. Anger. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't place, something that made my stomach twist. Without warning, he reached down, took off his shoe, and in one swift motion struck me on the head. The sound of the impact rang through the now silent room, and I froze. My hand instinctively rose to my scalp, my fingers feeling the sting of the blow. The guests gasped in shock, but no one moved. The world stood still as I stood there, feeling 1,000 emotions collide: hurt, betrayal, rage, all swirling inside me like a storm. I wasn't sure what to say or even how to react. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice small, not directed at anyone in particular. I wasn't just asking Preston or his mother. It was a question to the universe itself, as if searching for an explanation for this nightmare that had suddenly become my reality. Preston, realizing what he had done, stammered, "Anya, I didn't mean it. I was just—" But I didn't let him finish. "No," I said, my voice firm and steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "You've shown me exactly who you are. The pain of being hit was nothing compared to the pain of realizing the man I had just married was capable of this. I turned away from them both, knowing this moment had changed everything. I faced the guests, most of whom were still staring in stunned silence. "I'm sorry you had to witness this," I said, my voice calm though my heart raced. "Please continue to enjoy the celebration. I need a moment alone." Without waiting for a response, I walked out of the room. The music had stopped and the laughter had died down. The world outside seemed so different now. The joy and excitement of the day, a distant memory. I found a quiet corner away from the noise and chaos, my mind racing with thoughts of what had just happened. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just moments ago, I had been filled with happiness, believing I was beginning a new chapter of my life, and now I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. My mother-in-law's accusations, Preston's assault, the judgmental stares of the guests, it was all too much to bear. I needed time to think, to process everything. Could I really continue with this marriage after what had just happened? Could I trust Preston again? The questions weighed heavily on my mind as I stood there, feeling lost and unsure of what to do next. But one thing was clear. My life had changed and there was no going back. The perfect day I had imagined was gone, replaced by something darker and more painful. What I had to do now was figure out how to move forward, even if that meant doing it alone. I walked away from the crowd, and as soon as I did, I could hear the whispers start behind me, but I refused to let them affect me. I kept my head held high, knowing that this was not the end for me. Instead, it was the beginning of something new. My mind started racing, forming a plan. I wasn't going to let this humiliation go unanswered. Once I reached the privacy of the bridal suite, I allowed myself to finally feel the emotions I had been holding back. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't just tears of pain. They were also tears of determination. This moment wouldn't break me. I would not be a victim. I would rise above this and become a victor. My resolve was stronger than ever. After everything that had happened, I knew it was time to act. I couldn't let them get away with it. The first step in my plan was clear. Gather undeniable proof, solid evidence of the way Preston and his mother had mistreated me. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. I decided to hire a private investigator to help me. Mr. Harris had a reputation for being discreet, thorough, and effective, exactly the kind of person I needed for this delicate situation. "Mr. Harris, I need your help," I said when I called him, my voice steady, but I could feel the weight of my words. "My husband, Preston, and his mother haven't exactly been kind to me. I need evidence of their behavior." "What kind of evidence are we looking for?" Mr. Harris asked, his voice calm and professional. "Anything that shows a pattern," I explained, "emotional, financial, or even legal abuse. I need proof of what they've been doing." "Understood," he replied. "I'll start with surveillance and a background check. I'll dig into their pasts, their finances, everything. You'll get what you need." With Mr. Harris on my side, I finally felt like I was regaining control. I began recording every interaction with Preston and his mother, every phone call, every conversation. No detail was too small. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. Amid the chaos, my best friend, Sophie, became my lifeline. She was there for me through every moment, supporting me when the burden felt too heavy to bear. "Sophie, I don't know how I'd get through this without you," I admitted one day when the weight of it all seemed unbearable. "You don't have to do this alone," she reassured me, her voice a steady anchor. "I'm here, always. So, what's the plan?" "I'm collecting evidence," I told her, explaining the steps I was taking. "Mr. Harris is helping too. I want to expose Preston and his mother for who they really are." Sophie looked at me, concern clouding her features. "Be careful, Anya," she warned. "They won't see this coming, and when they do, they'll be furious." "I know," I nodded, "but I can't let them get away with this." In the weeks that followed, the evidence began to pile up. It was becoming impossible to ignore the pattern. The phone calls revealed Preston's true nature, his tone often aggressive, dismissive, and demeaning. The financial records Mr. Harris uncovered exposed just how much control Mrs. Brown had over his assets. Some of the transactions were suspicious, raising serious concerns about potential fraud. The deeper we dug, the darker the picture became. One evening, Sophie and I sat down to review everything we had gathered. The weight of it all hit me again as we went over the documents. But then something caught my eye. "Look at this, Sophie," I said, pointing to a series of bank statements on the table. "They're moving large sums of money, but where is it all going?" "And these emails," Sophie added, scanning through them. "It sounds like they're planning something, but we don't know what yet." "We need to connect the dots," I said, feeling the weight of everything we were uncovering. "This isn't just about emotional abuse anymore. There's a whole web of lies and manipulation going on." "Oh." Sophie's eyes widened as she stared at the evidence in front of us. "Anya, we're onto something big here," she said, her voice filled with both excitement and fear. The more I delved into the evidence, the clearer it became that Preston and his mother were involved in more than just toxic behavior. This went beyond their mistreatment of me. They were hiding something much bigger, something possibly illegal. I could feel the truth slowly unraveling, and I was determined to see this through to the end. As the days passed, I became more focused on my goal. I wasn't just collecting evidence for myself anymore. I was uncovering a story of deceit and manipulation that needed to be exposed. Preston and his mother had spent years weaving this web of lies, but now I had the power to tear it all apart. There was still much to be done, but I was no longer the helpless bride they had tried to humiliate. I was stronger than they had ever realized, and soon the truth would come to light. This wasn't just about getting justice for myself. It was about making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. I wasn't sure how things would end, but one thing was clear. I was ready to fight, and I wasn't going to back down. The whispers of that day were nothing compared to the roar of truth that was about to come crashing down on them. I would no longer be a victim of their games. I would be the one in control. I started to piece it all together, looking over the documents again, and I realized something shocking. "I think they're embezzling funds from Preston's company," I said to Sophie, my voice barely above a whisper. "These documents they're incriminating." Sophie looked at me, her face serious. "Anya, this is really serious. You need to be careful. They won't take kindly to being exposed." "I know," I said, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "But I can't back down. Not now. There's too much at stake." The evidence wasn't just about how cruel they had been to me. It was more than that. It pointed to serious criminal activity. I had everything I needed to make a move, and it was time to come up with a plan to bring them to justice. It was also time to take back control of my life. "Sophie," I said, feeling the weight of my decision, "I'm going to expose them publicly." Sophie hesitated for a moment, knowing the risks involved. "Anya, that's risky. You're playing with fire, but if anyone can do it, it's you." With Sophie by my side and the evidence in my hands, I felt stronger than I had in a long time. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. This was about justice, about making sure Preston and his mother faced the consequences of what they had done. It was time to show the world who they truly were. The next step was clear. I had to bring everything out into the open. I decided to organize an event, pretending it was for a big announcement. I invited friends, family, and even a few media contacts, people who would help get the story out. The venue was lavish, with an atmosphere full of excitement and curiosity. Everyone was eager to hear the news. As I stood at the front of the room, I took a deep breath. The time had come. "Thank you all for coming," I began, keeping my voice steady and my expression calm. Preston and his mother, Mrs. Brown, stood beside me smiling. They had no idea what was about to happen. "Anya, darling, we're so proud of you," Preston said, his voice sweet but insincere. "Whatever the announcement is, we support you." His words felt like poison, but I stayed composed. "I've gathered you all here to share some important truths," I said, pausing to gauge the room's reaction. "Truths about my marriage and about the Brown family." Mrs. Brown's smile faltered. "Truths?" she repeated, her voice shaky with a mix of confusion and fear. "Anya, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the abuse, the lies, and the illegal activities that have been going on behind the scenes," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. The room went silent. The tension was thick, and all eyes were on me.
Anya, have you lost your mind?
Preston's face turned red, his anger barely under control. Quite the opposite, Preston, I said calmly. I've never been more sane, and I've never been more sure of what I need to do. I gestured to the screen behind me. Exhibit A, I announced as the video began to play. It was a recording of one of our many abusive conversations. The crowd gasped as Preston's voice, thick with anger and cruelty, echoed through the room. The murmurs spread like wildfire, and I saw Mrs. Brown's face drain of color. Her hands trembled, betraying her shock. This is just the beginning, I said, holding up a folder filled with documents. These papers show financial irregularities, embezzlement, fraud. It's all here.
You can't do this, Anya,
Preston's voice boomed, a mix of desperation and threat.
You're ruining everything.
I locked eyes with him, my voice steady and firm. I'm not ruining anything, Preston. I'm exposing the truth that everyone deserves to see. The media personnel who had been invited for this very moment clicked their cameras feverishly, capturing every second of this dramatic revelation. There was no turning back. This was it.
Anya, please.
Mrs. Brown's voice was barely audible, her usual air of confidence crumbling. Let's talk about this privately. There's no need for this public display. I shook my head, refusing to step back. No, Mrs. Brown, no more private discussions. The time for hiding is over. As I continued to reveal more evidence, the room buzzed with reactions. Some guests sat frozen in shock. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Whispers rippled through the crowd, but no one could deny what they were seeing. Preston and Mrs. Brown stood motionless, their well-crafted facades crumbling, exposing the truth beneath. This is my story, I said, my voice strong and unwavering. A story of surviving abuse and standing up against injustice. I refuse to be a victim any longer. The event ended in a whirlwind of activity. Reporters rushed to surround me, firing questions from every angle, while many guests approached to offer words of support and admiration. I had done it. I had exposed the truth. I stood tall, maintaining my composure through it all. It was a moment of triumph, the moment I finally reclaimed my power and my voice. But this wasn't the end. The courtroom would be the next step, the place where everything would be resolved once and for all. As I sat in that stark, imposing room, a mix of nervousness and determination washed over me. My lawyer sat beside me, ready to fight for justice. This was the final act of my journey, and I was ready to see it through to the very end. I couldn't help but notice the unease in Preston and Mrs. Brown's eyes across the courtroom. Their once confident faces were now etched with anxiety. As the trial began, my lawyer stood tall and confident.
Your Honor, we are here to present the case against Preston and Mrs. Brown,
he said, his voice steady and unwavering. This isn't just about a divorce. This is about years of emotional and financial abuse that Anya has endured. From across the room, Preston leaned in, his voice low, laced with venom.
Anya, you can't win this. You're going too far.
I met his gaze without hesitation, my voice calm but resolute. This isn't about winning, Preston. It's about justice. It's about exposing who you really are. The trial moved forward, and my lawyer laid out the evidence with surgical precision. There were the recordings of Preston's cruel words, the financial documents that revealed the depths of their manipulation, and every shred of proof that painted a painful, undeniable portrait of the life I had been forced to live. Each piece of evidence was irrefutable.
Your Honor, as you can see, the evidence is overwhelming, my lawyer continued, his tone firm. We are not only seeking the divorce, but also legal action for the wrongs committed against my client.
Mrs. Brown, clearly shaken, tried to offer a defense. Your Honor, this is all just a misunderstanding. Anya is exaggerating, she stammered, her voice trembling, betraying her own lack of belief in her words. I didn't flinch. My gaze never left hers as I spoke, my words cutting through the room. Exaggerating? The evidence speaks for itself. You can't hide from the truth anymore. The judge listened intently, reviewing every piece of evidence, every word spoken. Time seemed to stretch on, but finally, after what felt like an eternity, she rendered her decision. In light of the overwhelming evidence, I grant the divorce and order legal action against both Preston and Mrs. Brown for their conduct. When the gavel struck, a wave of relief and vindication flooded over me. It was over. I had faced them, stood up for myself, and fought for what was right. I had emerged victorious. The long, painful chapter of my life was finally closed. With the legal battles behind me, it was time for me to start fresh. I found a small, peaceful home in the countryside, far away from the chaos and toxic drama of my past. The serenity and beauty of the place were exactly what I needed. I sat on the porch, a warm cup of tea in my hands, and let my eyes drift across the peaceful landscape. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, birds sang in the distance, and the sun cast its golden rays across the fields. For the first time in as long as I could remember, a profound sense of peace washed over me. This was my fresh start, a life free from the lies, manipulation, and pain. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth every step. I hadn't just survived, I had triumphed. I had found my inner strength, reclaimed my voice, and now I was free. As the sun began to set, casting a soft, warm glow over the horizon, I smiled. I was exactly where I was meant to be. The future may be uncertain, but it was mine to shape, filled with hope, healing, and happiness. This was my story of triumph. The story of a woman who refused to be silenced. I had stood tall against all odds, and now I was living a life of freedom and peace. What do you do when your life seems perfect, only to have it torn apart by betrayal and humiliation in front of everyone you love? Do you stay and endure the pain, or do you fight back? Anya had dreamed of her wedding day for years. She was ready to start a new chapter with Preston, but nothing could prepare her for the shocking moment when her mother-in-law accused her of disrespect. And when Preston, the man she trusted, struck her in front of everyone, the reality of her marriage shattered in an instant. The pain of being physically hit was nothing compared to the realization that her husband was capable of such violence. The dream she had built was gone, replaced by something dark and painful. But Anya didn't let this moment define her. Instead of crumbling, she took control of the situation. She hired a private investigator, collected evidence, and exposed the truth about Preston and his mother's manipulation. When they thought they had her cornered, she fought back. Not just for herself, but for justice. The room went silent as Anya revealed the truth, and the consequences of their actions began to unfold. Now, Anya is free. She's walked away from the toxic chaos of her past, leaving behind the lies and cruelty. She's reclaimed her life and found peace. So, what do you think? Would you have stayed and tried to make it work, or would you have walked away like Anya did? Let's discuss it in the comments. And if you found this story empowering, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
Money has a way of turning even the most loving families into strangers. I learned this truth on a Tuesday evening, crouched behind the mahogany credenza in my father's study, listening to my parents plot the theft of my future. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I'd come to return a borrowed sketchbook to Dad's desk, but their voices stopped me cold. My name, followed by my brother Brandon's, then words like investment and family legacy that made my stomach twist. Quinn's art school dreams are just that, dreams, my father said, his voice carrying that familiar dismissive tone. Brandon's business venture is a solid investment in our family's future. Your mother's inheritance would be better spent there. Richard's right, Mom chimed in. Brandon has real potential. Quinn can always take some community college classes if she wants to dabble in art. Dabble. The word hit like a slap. 3 years of advanced placement art classes, 2 state championships, and a portfolio that had earned preliminary acceptance to the country's top art schools, reduced to dabbling. I pressed my palm against my mouth, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. My brother Brandon, the golden child, had blown through 3 different college majors before settling on business. Now he needed startup capital, and suddenly, Grandmother Evelyn's inheritance was up for grabs. "It's settled then," Dad said. "We'll speak with Mother tomorrow about restructuring her estate planning. Brandon's presentation is solid. She'll see the logic in investing in his future." My fingers curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. Grandmother Evelyn was the only one who'd ever truly seen me, who'd recognized my talent as more than a hobby. She'd been hinting at helping with my tuition, but now? "What about Quinn's scholarship applications?" Mom asked, a rare moment of consideration. "She can apply for student loans like everyone else," Dad replied. "Brandon's opportunity is time-sensitive. We can't risk losing this chance." I'd heard enough. Sliding backward on trembling legs, I eased toward the door. My elbow knocked against a crystal paperweight, sending it rolling across the hardwood floor with a betraying thunk. "Hello? Is someone there?" Mom called out. I ran, past the family portraits lining the hallway, past Brandon's trophy case, past 18 years of being the afterthought in my own family. I didn't stop until I reached my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, dialing the one person who'd understand. "Mia, can you come over? I need to talk." "Quinn, what's wrong? You sound weird." "They're gonna take it all," I whispered, staring at the art school acceptance letter pinned to my bulletin board. "They're giving everything to Brandon, again." "Those bastards," Mia hissed. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up and walked to my easel, where my latest piece sat unfinished. It was a family portrait, but not the kind that hangs in hallways. In my version, shadows stretched long and dark behind each figure, revealing their true forms. Dad's shadow wore a crown of thorns, Mom's curved like a question mark, and Brandon's spread like wings of wax, melting at the edges. My own shadow? I hadn't decided yet, but as I picked up my brush, dipping it in the darkest shade of red I owned, I knew exactly what it would become. "Quinn?" Grandmother Evelyn's voice carried through the door, followed by her gentle knock. "Dear, I heard you running up the stairs. Is everything all right?" I looked at my painting, then at the door, a plan already forming in my mind. "No, Grandmother," I called back. "But it will be." Grandmother Evelyn's heels clicked against the marble floor like a judge's gavel. The family breakfast table fell silent as she placed a thick manila envelope beside her teacup. My parents exchanged nervous glances while Brandon kept scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. "I had an interesting conversation with my estate lawyer yesterday," Evelyn announced, stirring honey into her tea with deliberate precision. "It seems some changes to my will are in order." Dad's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. "Mother, surely there's no need." "Richard," she cut him off, "when was the last time you attended one of Quinn's art shows?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I stabbed at my untouched eggs, watching the yolk bleed across my plate. "We've been quite busy with Brandon's business proposal." Mom jumped in, her smile stretched thin. "But Quinn understands, don't you, dear?" I looked up, meeting Grandmother's steel gray eyes. "Actually, I have a show next week at the Riverside Gallery. My series on family dynamics was selected for their Emerging Artists Showcase." Brandon finally glanced up from his phone. "Wait, you're still doing that art thing? I thought you'd given that up after Dad explained about the inheritance." "The inheritance isn't yours to explain, Brandon," Evelyn said sharply. She pulled a document from the envelope. "I've decided to establish 2 separate trusts, equal amounts, different purposes." Dad's face darkened. "Mother, we discussed this. Brandon's venture requires substantial capital, and Quinn's education requires equal consideration." Evelyn slid one document toward me. "Congratulations, dear. Full tuition at the Florence Academy of Art, should you choose to accept." The room spun. Florence, the most prestigious art school in Europe, my dream school that I hadn't dared apply to, knowing the tuition would be impossible. "This is ridiculous," Brandon snapped, finally putting his phone down. "Quinn can study art anywhere. My business plan is time-sensitive. The market position is precarious at best." Evelyn interrupted. "Yes, I had your proposal reviewed by several independent advisors. Their feedback was illuminating." Color drained from Brandon's face. "You had no right. I have every right to know how my money will be spent." Evelyn's voice could have frozen flame, just as Quinn has every right to pursue her talents. Mom reached for Dad's arm. "Richard, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss," Evelyn stated. "The papers are being filed today. Equal trusts, equal opportunities. Unless, of course, you'd prefer I donate everything to the cat sanctuary." I bit back a smile, remembering the ancient Persian that had terrorized Dad throughout his childhood. Evelyn caught my eye and winked. "This family meeting is over," Dad announced, standing abruptly. "Brandon, we'll strategize alternatives this afternoon. Quinn, congratulations." The word sounded like it hurt him to say it. Later, in Evelyn's garden, I helped her deadhead her prized roses. "Why now?" I asked. "You knew about their plans for days." "Timing, my dear." She snipped a withered bloom with surgical precision. "Sometimes justice requires proper staging. Speaking of which, what exactly are you showing at this gallery exhibition?" I hesitated, thinking of the portraits in my studio, the ones that showed my family's true faces, their shadows twisting into shapes that revealed their secrets. "Truth," I finally answered. "I'm showing the truth." "Dangerous thing, truth," Evelyn mused, "especially when wrapped in beauty. The most devastating revelations often come dressed in gold frames, don't they?" She handed me a perfect white rose, its petals edged with the faintest hint of red. "Your father never understood art's power. He sees paint and canvas, but misses the weapon hidden in plain sight." I twirled the rose between my fingers, watching the colors shift. "Grandmother, are you suggesting—" "I'm suggesting nothing, dear." She smiled, but there was steel behind it. "I'm merely appreciating your artistic vision. Now, tell me more about this exhibition. I believe I know several collectors who simply must attend." The rose's thorns pressed against my skin, not quite breaking it. Not yet. The USB drive felt like a live grenade in my hand. I'd found it wedged behind Brandon's desk drawer while searching for a spare charger. What I discovered instead was enough to destroy him. Spreadsheets, bank statements, emails from bookies, the Golden Boy's secret life, documented in neat little folders labeled by date. The most recent showed a debt of $60,000, exactly the amount he'd requested for his business venture. "What are you doing in my room?" I spun around. Brandon stood in the doorway, his usual swagger replaced by something darker. The USB drive slipped from my fingers, clattering against his hardwood floor. "Looking for a charger," I said, but we both knew it was too late. He crossed the room in 3 strides, snatching up the drive. "How much did you see?" "Enough." I met his gaze. "Does Jessica know her engagement ring was paid for with borrowed money?" His hand shot out, gripping my arm. "You don't understand anything about this." "I understand numbers just fine." I twisted free. "What I don't understand is why Mom and Dad are ready to sacrifice my future to fund your gambling addiction. It's not—" He ran a hand through his perfect hair, messing it up for the first time I could remember. "I have it under control. The business plan is solid. Once it takes off—" "There is no business plan, is there?" The realization hit like ice water. "It's all just a cover to pay off your debts." Brandon's face crumpled just for a second, before his mask slipped back into place. "You don't get to judge me. You've had it easy, playing with your paints while I carry the weight of this family's expectations. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Easy? Try being invisible. Try having your dreams dismissed as hobbies while Golden Boy here pisses away his future on poker games. At least I'm trying to fix things. He slammed his fist against the desk. What are you going to do? Paint a picture about it. Actually, yes. I pulled out my phone, snapping photos of the scattered papers before he could stop me. I think it'll make an excellent addition to my gallery show. I'm calling it House of Cards. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? You're about to steal my future, Brandon. Why shouldn't I return the favor? He stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Quinn, please, if this gets out, it'll destroy everything, not just for me, for all of us. Think about Mom and Dad. I am thinking about them, and Grandmother Evelyn, whose money you're trying to steal, and Jessica, who deserves to know what kind of man she's marrying. I'll tell them myself, he said quickly. Just give me time. After the trust is settled. You mean after you've secured your bailout? I moved toward the door. You have until tomorrow night. Tell them the truth, or I will. Quinn? His voice cracked. For the first time in my life, I heard real fear in it. I'm your brother. I paused in the doorway, thinking of all the times he'd used that fact against me. All the dreams I'd sacrificed to maintain his spotlight. Yes, you are. That's why I'm giving you a chance to come clean. I looked back at him, at the perfect facade finally showing its cracks. But don't mistake it for weakness. I learned from the best how to put family first, remember? I left him standing there, surrounded by the evidence of his failures. In my studio, I pulled out a fresh canvas and my darkest colors. The painting formed beneath my hands, a house of cards built on shadows, with a golden king teetering at its peak. My phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Gallery called. They want to know the names of your pieces for the program. I studied the painting, watching the cards begin to fall. Tell them this one's called The Truth About Brothers, I typed back, and make sure my family gets front row seats. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be loud or violent. Sometimes it just needs to be honest. Brandon didn't show up for breakfast. The deadline I'd given him ticked away while Mom fretted over his empty chair, calling and texting with increasing desperation. By noon, his car was still in the driveway, but his room was empty, bed unslept in. I found him at Riverside Park, slouched on our childhood swing set, a bottle of bourbon nestled in the wood chips below. The Golden Boy had tarnished overnight. You look terrible, I said, taking the swing beside him. Couldn't sleep. His voice was sandpaper rough. Kept thinking about what Dad always says. A Matthews never fails. A Matthews never gets caught, I corrected. There's a difference. He laughed, hollow and sharp. Jessica's pregnant. The chains of my swing bit into my palms as I stopped short. What? Found out last week. That's why? He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. The gambling, the lies, the desperate grab for grandmother's money. Her family has expectations, standards I needed to prove I could provide. By betting everything on red? The words came out harsher than intended. Does she know about any of this? Would you tell someone you loved that you're nothing but a fraud? I studied his profile, seeing past the designer clothes and practiced charm to the scared boy beneath. For the first time, I recognized something of myself in him, that desperate need to be enough. The gallery opening is tonight, I said quietly. Your truth is hanging on those walls, Brandon. If you don't tell them, my art will. He turned, eyes bloodshot but clear. You know what'll happen. Dad will disown me. Jessica's family will destroy any chance I have of starting over. The baby will have an honest father. I cut in. Eventually. My phone buzzed. A text from Mia. The gallery was hanging my pieces. No going back now. Brandon reached for the bourbon, but I kicked it away. Glass clinking across concrete. "That's your first problem right there," I said, running from consequences instead of facing them. "Like you're so perfect?" He sneered. "Using your art to get revenge? How's that any better?" "It's not revenge," I said, standing. "It's truth. Something this family forgot about somewhere between your first trophy and Dad's corner office." "Quinn," he grabbed my wrist, grip desperate. "I'll tell them. Just not like this. Not through your paintings. Give me time to fix things my way." I looked down at his hand, at the expensive watch that probably belonged to a bookie by now. "You had time, years of it, now you have—" I checked my phone. 6 hours until the gallery opens. "Please," his voice cracked. "You're my sister." The same words from yesterday, but now they landed differently. I thought of the baby, of Jessica's dreams built on Brandon's lies, of how revenge and protection sometimes wore the same face. "Fine," I said finally. "I'll pull the most explicit pieces, but the rest stay up. Consider it your wake-up call." "Thank you." "Don't." I stepped back. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for your child, who deserves a father who faced his mistakes instead of running from them." I left him there, surrounded by childhood ghosts, and headed to the gallery. In my studio, I'd been working on a new piece all night, a portrait of Brandon, not as the golden child or the fallen heir, but as something more complex. In it, his shadow stretched behind him like broken wings, while before him, a tiny new shadow bloomed with possibility. My phone buzzed again. Grandmother Evelyn. "Remember, dear, the truth doesn't need revenge to do its work. It simply needs to be seen." I looked at the portrait, still wet in places, truth and mercy bleeding together on the canvas. Sometimes the heaviest weight we carry isn't our secrets, but the choice of what to do with them once they're revealed. 6 hours until the gallery opening. 6 hours for Brandon to choose his path. 6 hours for truth to do its work. The gallery hummed with anticipation as I made final adjustments to my exhibition. 2 hours until opening, and Brandon still hadn't shown. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Is he with you? He's not answering my calls." I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the reply button when Mia burst through the gallery doors. "Quinn, you need to see this." She thrust her tablet at me, displaying the local news website. My stomach dropped as I read the headline. "Matthews Industries announces emergency board meeting amid fraud allegations." "Your brother's name isn't mentioned," Mia said quickly, "but there's speculation about internal theft and—" The gallery door chimed again. Dad strode in, his face carved from stone. "Take them down, now." "The paintings stay up," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "This isn't a discussion." He moved toward the centerpiece, Brandon's portrait with its shadowed wings. "You have no idea what you're about to destroy." "Actually, I do." I stepped between him and the painting. $60,000 worth of destruction, give or take a few gambling debts. His face paled. "How did you—" "The same way I know about the company funds he's been embezzling." The words tasted like ash. "He's not just gambling with your money anymore, Dad. He's stealing from Matthews Industries." "Sir?" The gallery owner approached cautiously. "We open in less than 2 hours. Is there a problem?" Dad straightened his tie, mask sliding back into place. "No problem. My daughter and I were just discussing artistic interpretation." "Were we?" I grabbed my phone, pulling up the photos of Brandon's records. "Because I thought we were discussing how far you'll go to protect your golden boy while throwing me away." "Quinn," his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You're 18. One word from me and your trust fund." "Already transferred to my own account." Grandmother Evelyn's voice cut through the tension as she entered the gallery, along with proof of every questionable transaction Brandon's made using company resources. Dad spun toward her. Mother, you can't protect my granddaughter's future? Can't expose the truth you've been desperately hiding? She moved to stand beside me. Watch me. My phone buzzed again. Brandon, I'm sorry. Tell Jessica I'm sorry, too. Ice spread through my veins as I typed back, Where are you? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, fixing things my way. Call him, I told Dad, shoving my phone at him. Now. But Brandon wasn't answering. The gallery filled with early arrivals while Dad made frantic calls. Jessica appeared, beautiful in black, her hand unconsciously protecting her stomach. Mia stationed herself at the door, watching for Brandon. The board meeting starts in an hour, Dad said, running his hands through his hair. If he doesn't show up, he won't, I said, understanding finally clicking into place. He's running. Jessica stepped forward, her voice sharp. What do you mean, running? I looked at my family, Dad's crumbling facade, Mom's arriving confusion, Jessica's growing anger, Evelyn's quiet strength. Then at my paintings, each one a truth I'd tried to tell them all along. The exhibition opens in 10 minutes, the gallery owner announced. Quinn, Dad pleaded, think about what this will do to our family. I touched the canvas of Brandon's portrait, where I'd hidden his biggest secret in plain sight, the airline confirmation number painted into the shadow of his wings. Our family was broken long before tonight, I said. I'm just the one who stopped pretending it wasn't. The gallery lights dimmed for the opening, spotlights highlighting each painting like evidence in a trial. Outside, reporters gathered, drawn by rumors of the Matthews Industries scandal. Last chance, Dad said. Take them down. I met Grandmother Evelyn's eyes, saw her slight nod. No, I replied. It's time everyone saw the truth about our perfect family. The doors opened and the crowd poured in, hungry for art and scandal. My phone buzzed one final time. Brandon's last message, you win. But standing there, watching my family's carefully constructed world begin to crumble, I wasn't sure anyone was winning at all. The gallery erupted in chaos when Brandon stumbled through the door, drunk and desperate, 30 minutes after opening. His designer suit was wrinkled, his airline ticket crumpled in his fist. You couldn't let me go, could you? He slurred, weaving between shocked patrons. Had to make sure everyone saw your masterpiece first. Jessica stepped forward, one hand still protective over her stomach. Brandon, what's happening? He laughed, bitter and broken. Ask the artist. She's got it all figured out. Every dirty secret, every lie, right there on the walls for everyone to see. The crowd parted as he moved toward his portrait, where the hidden airline confirmation number caught the spotlight like an accusation. Dad tried to intercept him, but Brandon shoved past. You know what's funny? He turned to address the gathering crowd, swaying slightly. She painted me with broken wings, but she's the one who clipped them. That's enough, Dad growled, reaching for his arm. No, it's not. Brandon's voice cracked. Tell them, Quinn. Tell them how you found my records, how you threatened to expose everything unless I confessed. Tell them about the baby, about the money, about the company funds you stole. The words escaped before I could stop them. The gallery fell silent. Jessica's face went white. What money? All of it, I said quietly. The gambling debts, the embezzlement, the fake business plan. It's all there in the paintings, if you know where to look. Brandon lunged for the nearest canvas, hands outstretched to tear it down. I stepped between him and the art, but he was faster, stronger. His fingers caught my throat as we both went down. Brandon, multiple voices shouted at once, Hands pulled him away, but not before he'd ripped the canvas from the wall. "Is this what you wanted?" he screamed, throwing the torn painting at my feet. "To destroy everything? Congratulations, sister. You won." I touched my throat, feeling the bruises forming. "I never wanted—" "Save it." He straightened, suddenly eerily calm. "You got your revenge. Hope it was worth it." He turned to Jessica, who flinched away from his reach. "The baby isn't mine, is it?" Her silence was answer enough. The gallery dissolved into whispers and camera phones as security arrived. Dad was already on his phone, damage control mode activated. Mom sobbed quietly in a corner, while Grandmother Evelyn watched it all with steel in her eyes. "Miss Matthews?" A police officer appeared at my elbow. "We'll need a statement about the assault." I looked at the torn canvas, at Brandon being led away in handcuffs, at my family's carefully constructed facade lying in shreds around us. This was my truth, my revenge, my masterpiece of destruction. "Quinn?" Mia touched my arm. "The art critics are still here. They want to know the meaning behind the exhibition." "Of course they did. Nothing sells like scandal." "Tell them it's about family," I said, my voice hoarse. "About how we destroy the things we love in the name of protecting them." Jessica approached, her eyes red but clear. "I was never pregnant," she whispered. "I just wanted him to stay, to be the man I thought he was." "We all did," I replied. She nodded once, then walked away, leaving her engagement ring on top of the torn canvas. Grandmother Evelyn appeared beside me, surveying the wreckage of our family's reputation. "Truth is a weapon, dear one. Sometimes it wounds the hand that wields it." I watched as reporters swarmed outside, as Dad tried to salvage what was left of the family name, as Mom finally stopped crying and started really looking at the paintings. "I thought I wanted justice," I said, "but this feels like something else." "It feels like loss," Evelyn replied. "The question is, what will you create from it?" I picked up the torn canvas, tracing the ragged edges where art and truth had collided. In the destruction, I saw something new emerging, not revenge, not justice, but perhaps a different kind of truth altogether. The gallery lights dimmed, spotlighting the ruins of my family's perfect facade, while outside, the real story was just beginning to unfold. 3 days after the gallery disaster, I found Brandon in Grandmother Evelyn's rose garden, methodically destroying her prized blooms. Each snip of the scissors sent white petals drifting like surrender flags onto the grass. "Those are her favorites," I said. "Were her favorites." He didn't look up. "The board voted this morning. Dad's stepping down. The company's facing an audit. Everything's gone." Snip, another rose fell. "But you knew that would happen, didn't you?" "I knew the truth would come out eventually." He laughed, hollow and sharp. "The truth? You want truth?" He finally turned, dark circles under his eyes matching the bruises he'd left on my throat. "Here's truth. I just spent 2 nights in jail. Jessica's family is suing. Mom hasn't stopped crying. And Dad," he swallowed hard, "Dad can't even look at me." "Brandon, but you got what you wanted, right? Your art school, your recognition, your revenge." He gestured at the ruined garden. "How does it feel, being the family's new golden child?" "That's not what I—" "Save it." He raised the scissors again, but I grabbed his wrist. "Stop destroying her garden." "Why? You destroyed everything else." We grappled for the scissors, feet crushing fallen petals as we struggled. He was stronger, but I was faster, twisting away as the blade sliced air where my face had been. "Is this what you really wanted?" I demanded, backing away. "To hurt me? To hurt Grandmother? She's the only one who ever truly loved us both." "She chose you." The scissors clattered to the ground as his voice broke. "Everyone always chose me except her. She saw through everything, and she chose you." Understanding hit like a physical blow. This was never about the money, was it? Of course it was about the money. But his hands shook as he ran them through his hair. The gambling, the company funds, Jessica's lies, it all spiraled so fast. I just needed one big win to fix everything. And now? Now? He laughed again, but it sounded more like a sob. Now I'm exactly what your paintings showed. A fraud, a failure. The golden boy who turned out to be rust all along. You're my brother, I said quietly. That's all you ever needed to be. Really? Because your art says different. My art shows truth, Brandon. Even the ugly parts. Even the parts that hurt. I picked up one of the fallen roses. But it also shows possibility. Look at your portrait again. Really look. The broken wings aren't just broken. They're changing. He stared at me for a long moment, then at the destruction around us. I can't fix this. No, Grandmother Evelyn's voice came from behind us. We both turned to see her standing on the garden path, surveying her ruined roses with calm eyes. But you can plant new ones. She moved between us, touching the bruises on my neck, then the tears on Brandon's face. The truth has done its work, she said. The question now is, what will you both create from these ashes? Brandon looked at the scissors lying among the fallen petals, then at me. I'm sorry, he whispered. For everything. I know. I held out the rose I'd picked up. Help me replant the garden? He hesitated, then took it. I don't know how. I'll teach you, Evelyn said. Both of you. There's power in creation, in nurturing growth from destruction. Perhaps that's a truth worth painting, Quinn? I looked at my brother, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time, not as the golden child or the fallen heir, but as someone trying to grow new wings. Yes, I said, I think it is. We spent the rest of the afternoon in the garden, clearing debris and preparing soil for new roses. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, painted in dirt and sweat instead of oils and canvas. Sometimes the truest art comes from what we choose to rebuild. The Florence Academy acceptance letter sat unopened on my easel while I finished the last brushstroke on my new collection. 6 paintings, arranged in a perfect circle. Our family's story told through blooming roses, each one emerging from different kinds of darkness. Dad lingered in my studio doorway, his tie loosened, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The board approved my resignation this morning. I cleaned my brush, taking my time. What will you do? Start over. Smaller firm, different name. He stepped inside, studying the paintings. Your mother's talking about teaching again. She used to love it before she decided being the perfect corporate wife was more important. He flinched but nodded. We all lost ourselves somewhere along the way, didn't we? The roses in my paintings answered for me, white blooms tinged with red, thorns that both wounded and protected, shadows that held secrets and possibility. Brandon's therapist thinks art might help, Dad said quietly. With his recovery, he asked if you'd consider. I'm leaving for Florence in 3 weeks. I know. He touched the edge of one canvas where I'd painted a familiar garden path. But maybe when you return, your grandmother's foundation is doing remarkable work with art therapy. I thought of Brandon in Evelyn's garden, learning to nurture instead of destroy, of Mom rediscovering her voice in front of a classroom, of Dad standing in my studio instead of his boardroom, finally seeing the power of creation over control. I'll think about it, I said. The acceptance letter crinkled as I picked it up, but I didn't open it yet. Instead, I gathered my paintings and headed for the garden. Evelyn was there, tending the new roses we'd planted, their stems still fragile, but reaching toward light. Your final collection? She asked, eyeing the canvases. Not exactly. I arranged them in their circle on the garden path. It's a beginning, she smiled, understanding dawning as she saw how each painting flowed into the next, destruction into growth, darkness into light, revenge into healing. And what shall we call this new beginning? Family portraits in rose and thorn, I said, a study in transformation. Brandon appeared at the garden gate, right on time for his daily gardening lesson. He stopped when he saw the paintings, his hands tightening on the garden tools. "You painted us again," he said. "I painted us differently this time." He moved closer, examining each canvas. "The thorns are still there." "They always will be," I replied, "but look what grows between them." Evelyn touched the acceptance letter in my hand. "Are you ready?" I finally broke the seal, though I already knew what it said. My future, spelled out in formal letterhead and careful words. But it wasn't just about Florence anymore, or proving myself, or even escaping my family's shadow. "I'm thinking of specializing in art therapy," I said, "when I return." Brandon looked up sharply. "Really? Someone once showed me that art can heal as well as hurt." I met his eyes. "That truth doesn't have to destroy if we learn to grow from it." He nodded slowly, then held out a pair of garden shears. "Show me where to prune these roses." I took them, feeling their weight, so different from scissors used in anger, yet the same basic tool. "First, you have to understand what you're trying to help grow." As we worked, I saw Mom watching from the kitchen window, her old teaching materials spread across the table, Dad in his study, drafting plans for his new, smaller firm, Evelyn moving between her beloved roses, tending to old growth and new possibilities alike. My phone buzzed, a message from Mia about the gallery wanting to show my new collection. "Well?" she asked, "ready to show the world your latest truth?" I looked at my family, each of us learning to bloom differently in the aftermath of our perfect facade's destruction. "Not truth this time," I typed back. "Hope." The roses nodded in the evening breeze, their petals catching the last light like promises kept and broken and remade. Some stained with past darkness, others opening pure and new, but all of them finally growing toward something better.
The first thing I noticed when I opened my front door wasn't the overturned furniture or the scattered papers. It was the silence, that heavy, unnatural quiet that wraps around you like a burial shroud, whispering that something is terribly wrong. I'm Audrey, and I just spent 3 days at a corporate retreat, learning how to trust my colleagues through ridiculous team-building exercises. Now I'm standing in my ransacked living room, realizing I should have been more concerned about trusting my own family. My fingers trembled as I dialed Ryan's number. 1 ring, 2 rings, the familiar click of voicemail. Of course, my dear husband was probably at his mother's house, pretending not to know why his wife was calling. "Ryan, someone broke into the house. The safe is open. Call me back immediately." I walked through the debris of my violated home, cataloging the damage. Photo frames face down, drawers pulled out and emptied, couch cushions slashed open. But they hadn't been looking for money or jewelry. No, this was personal. They went straight for what mattered most. My grandmother's letters, the only pieces I had left of her. My phone buzzed. Not Ryan. Evan from work. "How was the drive back?" he asked. "Someone broke into my house." My voice cracked. "The safe, they knew the combination, Evan." "Jesus, are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" "No, I know exactly who did this." I kicked aside a torn magazine. "Helen's fingerprints are all over this mess. She's been trying to get those letters for months." "Your mother-in-law, why would she?" "Because she can't stand that Ryan married someone who won't bow to her every whim." I reached the kitchen, where even the cabinets had been emptied. "She thinks those letters prove my grandmother's family wronged hers decades ago. Some ancient real estate dispute she won't let die." "Call the police," Evan said. "And tell them what?" that my mother-in-law used a key my husband probably gave her to steal family documents, that my sister-in-law probably helped because she's bitter about her divorce and wants to hurt someone else's marriage. I laughed, but it came out hollow. They're too smart for that. They'll say Ryan gave them permission. It'll be my word against the entire Miller family. The basement door stood open. I hadn't checked down there yet. I have to go, Evan. I need to see what else they took. Audrey, wait. I hung up and descended the stairs, each step creaking under my feet. The basement light flickered on, revealing more chaos, but something caught my eye. A small piece of paper trapped under a fallen box. I pulled it free. It was a receipt from the hardware store 3 days ago for a duplicate key. My phone buzzed again. Ryan. Where are you? I asked before he could speak. At Mom's. Listen, Audrey, I can explain. Did you give her a key? Silence. Then, she said she just wanted to look for some old family photos while you were away. I didn't think. You never do think when it comes to her, do you? I crushed the receipt in my fist. Those letters were all I had left of my grandmother, Ryan, the only things that were truly mine. We can talk about this when I get home. No. The word came out sharp enough to cut. We'll talk about this in front of everyone. I'm coming over there right now. And Ryan, tell your mother to prepare for war. I ended the call and stood in my destroyed basement, surrounded by the wreckage of trust. They thought they could break me, make me submit to their control, like everyone else in their lives. But they had no idea what they'd just started. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one who strikes first. It's the one who knows how to strike back harder. Helen's pristine living room made my skin crawl. Everything perfectly arranged, not a cushion out of place, while my house lay in ruins across town. The family photos on her walls told their own story. Ryan and Chloe's childhood moments, carefully curated to show Helen's version of reality. Not a single picture of my wedding day among them. I have no idea what you're talking about. Helen's voice dripped honey-sweet poison as she poured tea into delicate cups. Ryan gave me permission to look for old family albums while you were away. Nothing more. Chloe sat beside her mother, arms crossed, wedding ring conspicuously absent. You're being hysterical, Audrey, as usual. I placed the hardware store receipt on the coffee table. Funny how you needed a new key made 3 days ago. Planning ahead? Ryan shifted in his seat, eyes darting between his mother and me. Maybe we should all calm down. Oh, we're very calm, I said, watching Helen's perfectly manicured fingers tighten around her teacup. Just like we were calm last Christmas when you went through my phone while I was sleeping. Or last month when you showed up unannounced at my office to check on me. I worry about my son, Helen said. Someone needs to look out for his interests. His interests. My laugh felt like broken glass in my throat. Or yours. Mother was right about you from the start. Chloe leaned forward, eyes gleaming. You never understood our family, always keeping secrets, hiding things in that safe of yours. Those letters belong to my grandmother. Letters that prove your family cheated ours 60 years ago. Helen's mask cracked. That property should have been ours. Your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing when she... Mother. Ryan's warning came too late. I stood slowly, pieces clicking into place. So you admit you took them? Helen's face smoothed over instantly. I admitted nothing. And you have no proof. You're right. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the record button. But I will. Ryan, are you coming home or staying here? He looked at his mother, then at me. Always torn, always choosing the path of least resistance. I think maybe we all need space to cool off. Wrong answer. I headed for the door, pausing to look back at Helen. You know what's funny? Those letters you stole? They're not even the originals. Just copies I kept as decoys. Grandmother taught me well. Always keep what matters most, where manipulative people can't reach it. Helen's teacup clattered against its saucer. You're lying. Am I? Guess you'll have to wonder about that, along with what else I might have hidden away. I met Ryan's eyes. Don't bother coming home tonight, or maybe ever. Audrey, wait, he started to rise, but Chloe grabbed his arm. Let her go, she said. She's just trying to manipulate you, like always. I closed the door on Helen's perfectly ordered world and walked to my car. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, but not from fear. The originals were safe, just as I'd said, locked away in a safety deposit box since the day I married Ryan, and saw the hunger in Helen's eyes when grandmother's letters were mentioned at the wedding. My phone buzzed. Evan again. How bad was it? He asked. They took the bait. Helen practically confessed. I started the engine. But I need your help with something else. Remember that security system you installed at your lake house? The one with the hidden cameras. Yeah, why? Because I'm done playing defense. They want to go through my things? Let's make sure we catch them in the act next time. I pulled away from Helen's house, watching it shrink in my rearview mirror. And Evan, thank you for being the one person in my life who actually listens. Always. But Audrey, just be careful. People like that, they're most dangerous when they're cornered. I ended the call, mind already racing with plans. Helen thought she knew everything about me, had me all figured out. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd spent 3 years watching her manipulate everyone around her. I'd learned from the best, and now it was time to put those lessons to use. The coffee shop across from Helen's favorite salon wasn't my usual spot, but it gave me a perfect view. I'd been watching for 2 hours when Evan slid into the seat across from me, pushing a fresh cup toward my hands. The cameras are set up, he said. Motion sensors, night vision, everything feeding directly to your phone. But are you sure about this? I nodded toward the salon's window, where Helen and Chloe sat getting their weekly manicures. Listen. I pressed play on my phone, their voices crystal clear through the bug I'd planted in Helen's purse during our confrontation. We need those original letters, Helen was saying. That safety deposit box has to be at her bank downtown. Ryan says she's been going through their financial records, Chloe replied, probably planning to divorce him and take everything. Over my dead body, I didn't spend 30 years building this family's reputation to have her destroy it. We're going back to the house tomorrow while she's at work. There has to be something we can use against her. I stopped the recording. Still think I'm paranoid? Evan's face hardened. We should take this to the police. And tell them what? That my mother-in-law is planning to rob me. They'll say it's a family matter. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. Besides, I want more than just stopping them. I want them to face consequences for once in their privileged lives. My phone buzzed, Ryan calling again. 3rd time today. I declined it. He's been sleeping at their house, I said. Probably plotting with them, trying to figure out where the originals are. Or maybe he's worried about you. Then he should have worried before giving them a key to our house. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth before choosing them over me. Again. A text from Ryan. Please come home. We need to talk. Home, I muttered. Like that means anything anymore. Evan leaned forward. Audrey, I know you're hurt, but the salon door chimed. Helen and Chloe emerged, fresh manicures gleaming. They headed toward Helen's Mercedes, but Helen paused, looking directly at the coffee shop window. I didn't move, couldn't breathe. Her lips curved into that knowing smile I'd grown to hate. She knew I was watching. Time to go, I said, standing abruptly. They'll be at my house tomorrow at 10, according to their usual schedule. That's when we'll catch them. Evan raised an eyebrow. I thought you wanted to handle this yourself. I do, but I gathered my things, hands shaking slightly. I can't face them alone anymore. I need someone in my corner. Always. He touched my arm gently. Just promise me something. Don't let revenge consume you. I've seen what it does to people. I watched Helen's car pull away, remembering the day she'd first shown her true colors. Our wedding reception, when she'd cornered me in the bathroom. You'll never be good enough for this family, she'd said. One day, Ryan will realize that. This isn't about revenge, I told Evan. It's about justice, and maybe saving Ryan from them, even if he doesn't want to be saved. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. I opened it and felt my blood freeze. Found something interesting in your grandmother's old law firm records. Tomorrow noon, Riverside Park. Come alone, or Ryan learns everything about the Anderson case. Evan noticed my expression. What's wrong? I closed the message, mind racing. The Anderson case, my grandmother's biggest regret, the secret she'd taken to her grave. The real reason Helen hated our family. Nothing, I lied, forcing a smile. Just work stuff. I should go prepare for tomorrow. But as I walked to my car, Helen's words from 3 years ago echoed in my head. One day Ryan will realize that. Maybe she was right. Maybe tomorrow he would. And maybe it was time he did. Riverside Park looked different at noon. Colder somehow. I sat on a bench, clutching a manila envelope. Ammunition for whatever game Helen was playing. The Anderson case, files my grandmother had sealed away decades ago. Now a weapon in my hands. A shadow fell across my lap. Not Helen. Ryan? My voice cracked. What are you? Mother told me everything. He sat beside me, leaving careful space between us. About the Anderson case. About what your grandmother did to our family. The envelope felt heavier. Did she tell you how your grandfather tried to blackmail mine? How he threatened to destroy their law firm unless they gave him that property? That's not. He stopped, rubbing his face. She said you'd try to twist things. Like she twisted you. I turned to face him. When did you give her the safe combination, Ryan? His silence was answer enough. The day after our wedding, I continued. When she convinced you I was hiding something. That's why you've been checking our bank statements, right? Looking for evidence I'm stealing from you? I was protecting our family. Our family. The laugh that escaped me didn't sound like my voice. There is no our family. There's only ever been yours. My phone buzzed. Evan texting about the cameras he'd installed. Everything was ready for tomorrow's trap. But suddenly, it all felt hollow. She's using you, I said softly. She always has. And you let her because it's easier than standing up to her. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I stood, dropping the envelope in his lap. Here, the precious Anderson case files. Proof that your grandfather was the one who committed fraud, not mine. Proof that your mother's been lying all these years. He stared at the envelope. How did you get them? From my grandmother's old partner. Turns out he's been waiting years for someone to finally expose the truth. I stepped back. But you know what? Keep them. Burn them. Give them to Helen. I don't care anymore. Audrey, wait. I filed for divorce yesterday. The words hung between us like shattered glass. Ryan's face went pale. You what? Check your email. The papers should arrive today. My hands were steady now. I'm done being the villain in Helen's story. Done watching you choose them over me. Done pretending we have a marriage worth saving. He stood, reaching for me. We can fix this. I'll talk to Mother. That's exactly the problem. I moved away from his touch. Your first instinct is still to run to her. It always will be. My phone buzzed again. Helen this time. Where are you? We had a deal. I typed back, deals changed. Ask Ryan about the files. You can't just throw away 3 years of marriage, Ryan said. You already did that when you gave them the key to our house. I started walking away, then paused. You know what the saddest part is? I actually thought I could save you from them, but you don't want to be saved. Audrey. Goodbye, Ryan. I walked through the park, past the spot where he proposed, past the bench where we used to have Sunday picnics. My phone kept buzzing. Helen, Ryan, even Chloe. I silenced them all. Only Evan's message got through. Cameras are live. You still want to go through with tomorrow's plan? I stopped at the park exit, looking back one last time. Ryan stood where I'd left him, envelope clutched in his hands, looking lost. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered the ransacked house, the violated safe, 3 years of subtle manipulation and gaslighting. Yes, I texted back, but change of plans. I don't just want to catch them in the act anymore. What do you want? I watched Ryan pull out his phone, probably calling Helen. always running back to mother. I want to destroy them, I typed, all of them. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to burn everything to the ground and start over. The security camera feed flickered on my laptop screen as I sat in my car across the street. 10 minutes until Helen's usual Thursday morning intrusion. Evan's sophisticated setup captured every angle of my house. Front door, back door, even the garden path Helen loved to criticize. "You don't have to watch this," Evan said from the passenger seat. "We can just let the cameras record. I need to see it." My knuckles whitened around my coffee cup. Need to know exactly how they do it. Right on schedule, Helen's Mercedes glided to a stop in front of my house. She stepped out, perfectly coiffed as always, followed by Chloe. But then a third door opened. Ryan. The coffee cup crumpled in my grip. "He's helping them." They approached the front door, Ryan glancing nervously over his shoulder. Helen said something, gesturing impatiently. He pulled out a key, not the copy, but his original. "Jesus," Evan muttered. "Audrey, maybe we should—" "Wait," I grabbed his arm as a fourth figure emerged from Helen's car. "Who is that?" The man in the expensive suit walked with authority, carrying a briefcase. He looked familiar somehow. "That's James Morton," Evan said. "Helen's lawyer. I've seen him at charity events." The group disappeared inside my house. I switched between camera views, watching them move through rooms with disturbing familiarity. Helen directed them like a general commanding troops. "The study," she was saying, voice clear through the hidden microphones. "Those Anderson files have to be here somewhere." "Mother, she said she gave them to me," Ryan protested weakly. "Copies, obviously. You think your wife would give up her only leverage? Search everything." I watched them tear through my home again, but this time was different. This time, I saw Ryan's hands shaking as he opened drawers, saw Chloe's satisfied smirk as she knocked books off shelves, saw Helen's mask slip when she thought no one was watching, revealing raw desperation beneath. "The safe," Morton said suddenly. "Did you check behind it?" My breath caught. The wall safe had been a decoy. Everyone knew about it. But behind it, "There's nothing back there," Ryan said quickly, too quickly. Helen's eyes narrowed. "Move it. Mother, move it." I grabbed my phone, fingers hovering over 911. Behind that safe was a hidden compartment, installed by the previous owner. Inside were documents far more damaging than the Anderson case. Evidence of Helen's own financial misconduct, carefully gathered over 3 years of watching and waiting. Ryan stepped forward, then stopped. "No." "What did you say?" Helen turned on him. I said no. His voice strengthened. "This ends now. We're leaving. After everything I've done for you." Helen's calm cracked. "That woman has poisoned you against your own family. That woman is my wife." "Not anymore," Morton interrupted smoothly. "The divorce papers were filed yesterday. You have no legal right to prevent us from—" "From what?" I stepped into the doorway, phone recording everything. Breaking and entering, destruction of property, conspiracy. They froze like guilty children, except Helen. She smiled that knowing smile. "Perfect timing, dear. We were just discussing the Anderson case and other family matters." "I can see that." I moved further into the room, Evan close behind. "But you made one mistake, Helen. You got sloppy. Desperate." "I don't know what you mean." "The Anderson case was never about property fraud, was it? It was about covering up what really happened. What you did." Her smile slipped. "You're confused. The real documents aren't behind that safe. They're already with the district attorney." I met Ryan's stunned gaze. "Along with proof that your mother embezzled millions from her own charity foundation. That's why she's so desperate to find evidence against my family. To protect herself." The room erupted in chaos. Helen lunged for her lawyer. Chloe started screaming. Ryan stood frozen between them all. But I kept my eyes on Helen, watching her perfect world crumble. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about letting them destroy themselves. And sometimes justice comes from simply telling the truth. The police lights painted my living room in alternating red and blue. Helen sat primly on the couch, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face as she spoke to the officers. "I was just trying to protect my son," she sobbed. "From her." She pointed at me, and I watched 3 years of careful planning crumble. "Mrs. Miller was threatening our family," Morton added smoothly. "We have evidence of her harassment, her obsession with destroying her mother-in-law's reputation. The break-in was merely an attempt to recover documents that rightfully belonged to the family." My phone felt heavy in my pocket. The recording of their intrusion now useless. They'd gotten ahead of me, turned it all around, just like Helen always did. "That's not true," Ryan said suddenly. All eyes turned to him. "Mother, stop. Just stop." Helen's tears vanished instantly. "Ryan, dear, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." He stepped away from her, toward me, but I backed away. Too little, too late. "The embezzlement accusations, they're true, aren't they? That's why you've been so desperate to destroy Audrey's family's reputation, to cover your tracks." "Everything I did was for this family." Helen's mask shattered completely. "That money secured your future, your sister's future, and she jabbed a finger at me, threatened to ruin everything." The officers exchanged glances. One spoke into his radio. "Mrs. Helen Miller, we're going to need you to come down to the station. This is absurd. I'm the victim here." She turned to her lawyer. "Morton, do something." But Morton was already edging toward the door. "I think our professional relationship has concluded, Helen, given the circumstances." Everything happened quickly after that. Helen screaming as they led her away. Chloe following, wailing about family loyalty. Morton slipping out during the chaos. The evidence I'd gathered being collected, documented, tagged. Ryan stayed. "Audrey," he started. "Don't." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. "Just don't." "I didn't know about the charity money, about any of it, I swear. But you knew about the break-ins, the harassment, the lies." My voice cracked. "You chose them. Every single time, you chose them." "I can fix this." "Fix what?" I gestured at our destroyed home. "My grandmother's letters are still gone. Our marriage is over. Your mother's going to jail. What exactly can you fix?" Evan appeared in the doorway. "Audrey, the detective needs your statement." I moved to follow him, but Ryan caught my arm. "I love you," he said desperately. "Isn't that worth something?" I looked at his hand on my arm, remembering every touch, every promise, every moment I'd thought we were building something real. Then I remembered watching him help them break into our home, watching him choose his mother's lies over my truth one last time. "Love without trust isn't love," I said quietly. "It's just another form of control." I pulled away, leaving him standing in the wreckage of our life together. The detective waited with more questions, more forms, more procedures, hours of explaining how I'd gathered evidence of Helen's embezzlement, how I'd documented her harassment, how I'd watched my marriage die slowly, under the weight of manipulation and lies. Later, alone in my car, I pulled out my grandmother's last letter, the real one, not the copy Helen had stolen, the one I'd kept close all these years. "Remember, dear heart," she'd written. "Sometimes winning means walking away. Sometimes the greatest victory is in refusing to play their game at all." My phone buzzed. Ryan again. I declined the call and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I could see him standing in the doorway of what used to be our home, looking lost. For a moment, my heart ached. But as I drove away, I realized something. In trying to destroy Helen, I'd almost become her. Manipulative, obsessed with control, willing to sacrifice anything for victory. My grandmother had been right. The real win wasn't in bringing Helen down. It was in finally setting myself free. The courthouse hallway stretched endless and cold. I sat on a hard wooden bench, watching Helen's society friends whisper among themselves as they waited for her arraignment. 3 weeks since the break-in, and still they couldn't quite believe their charitable board president was facing embezzlement charges. Ryan appeared at the end of the hall, dark circles under his eyes. Chloe clung to his arm, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. I focused on my phone, pretending to read emails. Audrey, his voice was closer than I expected. Can we talk? The divorce papers are with your lawyer, I said without looking up. Just sign them. That's not. He sat beside me, too close. Mother wants to make a deal. Now I looked at him. A deal? She'll return your grandmother's letters, all of them, if you drop the charges. A laugh bubbled up, bitter as coffee grounds. You really don't get it, do you? She's still my mother. And that's all that matters, right? I stood, needing distance. Even after everything she did, everything she stole, she made mistakes. Mistakes, my voice carried, making heads turn. She systematically destroyed our marriage, terrorized me in my own home, stole millions from her own charity. Those aren't mistakes, Ryan. They're choices. Helen's lawyer appeared, beckoning to Ryan. But before he could move, the courthouse doors burst open. Evan rushed in, clutching a manila envelope. Got it, he said, breathing hard. Found it in Morton's office. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single document, a letter from Helen to her lawyer, dated 3 years ago, the day before my wedding. What is that? Ryan asked. Insurance, I said, scanning the contents. In case I ever threatened her control over you. I looked up as Helen entered in handcuffs, flanked by officers. She planned this from the beginning. The harassment, the break-ins, everything. It was all calculated to make me look unstable, obsessed with the Anderson case. Helen's eyes locked onto the letter. For the first time, I saw real fear there. Where did you get that? She demanded. Your lawyer isn't as loyal as you thought. I held up the letter. You documented everything, Helen. Every step of your plan to destroy me. And now everyone's going to know exactly who you are. You ungrateful little. She lunged forward, but the officers held her back. Mother, stop. Ryan moved between us. Just stop. Helen's face crumpled. Everything I did was for you. To protect you from her. From what? Ryan's voice cracked. From being happy? From having a life outside your control. She never loved you like I do. No, I interrupted. I loved him enough to let him choose. You loved him enough to make sure he never could. The whispers around us grew louder. Helen's friends watched in horror as their perfect society matron shattered before their eyes. Chloe backed away from her mother, finally seeing the truth she'd helped enable. The arraignment's starting, Evan said softly. I handed the letter to the district attorney, who'd been waiting quietly nearby. Then I turned to Ryan one last time. I did love you, I said. But love shouldn't hurt like this. Audrey, please. Goodbye, Ryan. I walked away as Helen was led into the courtroom, her carefully constructed world collapsing behind me. My phone buzzed, a text from my grandmother's old law partner. Found something in the archives, it read. Your grandmother would be proud. Outside, the autumn air felt clean and sharp. Evan caught up with me at the bottom of the courthouse steps. You okay? He asked. I watched leaves scatter across the pavement, breaking free from their branches, carried away by the wind. No, I said honestly, but I will be. Because sometimes winning isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about refusing to let them destroy you. And sometimes the greatest revenge is simply walking away, head held high, leaving them to face the consequences of their own choices. The last box from my old life sat unopened on my new apartment floor. Through the window, downtown lights glittered like scattered stars, so different from the suburban darkness I'd left behind. My phone lit up, Evan's text about Helen's sentencing. 5 years for embezzlement. The society pages were already buzzing with scandal. Her carefully crafted reputation shattered like a dropped teacup. A knock at the door made me freeze. I knew that pattern. 3 quick taps, 1 slow. Ryan stood in the hallway, holding a familiar leather-bound bundle. Grandmother's letters, I said, throat tight. Found them in Mother's study while cleaning out the house. He held them out like a peace offering. They were always yours, I took the bundle, fingers tracing the worn edges. How is she? Angry, bitter. He shrugged. Chloe's in therapy. Says she's starting to understand some things about our family. And you? Learning to stand on my own. He glanced past me into the apartment. You're painting. An easel stood by the window, canvas half covered in bold strokes of red and gold, something I discovered by accident, a way to pour out everything words couldn't express. It helps, I said simply. Audrey, I don't. I stepped back, creating distance. We both know why it ended. I know, He pulled out an envelope, the signed divorce papers, and something else you should see. Inside was a newspaper clipping from 30 years ago, a small article about a young Helen Miller, before she married into money, desperately trying to prove herself worthy of high society. She was always afraid, Ryan said quietly, of losing control, of being exposed as not good enough. I'm not excusing what she did, but I understand it now. Understanding doesn't make it right. No, but it helps me not become her. A siren wailed somewhere in the city below. In my old life, I would have flinched at the noise. Now it felt like a reminder. Life goes on, changes, transforms. I never wanted revenge, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I just wanted to be free. I know, that's why you won. He turned to leave, then paused. The painting, it's beautiful. After he left, I opened the bundle of letters. My grandmother's words flowed across the pages, telling stories of strength, of standing up to bullies, of choosing integrity over revenge. But one passage caught my eye, written just before she died. Remember, dear heart, some people will try to dim your light because they fear their own darkness. Your power lies not in fighting them, but in continuing to shine. I picked up my brush, adding touches of blue to the canvas. Not everything needed resolution. Not every story needed a neat ending. Sometimes victory wasn't in destroying your enemies or even forgiving them. Sometimes it was in discovering who you really were without them. My phone buzzed again. Evan inviting me to dinner. Not a date, not yet, but maybe someday. For now, friendship was enough. For now, I had my freedom, my truth, my art. The city lights flickered, casting shadows that danced across my canvas. In my old life, I would have seen threats in those shadows. Now I saw possibilities, patterns, stories waiting to be told. I picked up another brush. The night was young, the canvas was waiting. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, completely free. Not because I'd won, not because Helen lost, but because I'd finally learned the difference between revenge and liberation. And in that difference, I found myself.
The doorbell chimed just as I was sliding the lasagna into the oven. Perfect timing. Dylan had finally settled into his afternoon nap, and I'd planned to tackle the mountain of laundry waiting upstairs. I wiped my hands on my apron and headed for the door, expecting the usual package delivery. Instead, I found myself face to face with a woman who looked vaguely familiar. Tall, impeccably dressed in a cream blazer, her dark hair falling in perfect waves. The kind of woman who belongs on a magazine cover, not on my front porch on a Tuesday afternoon. Michelle Thompson? Her voice was steady, confident. I'm Sophie Grant. We need to talk about Ryan. My stomach dropped. I knew that name. I'd seen it pop up on Ryan's phone a few times, always dismissed with a quick, just a client when I'd asked. The way she said my husband's name, though. There was an intimacy there that made my fingers curl against the doorframe. I'm sorry, but Ryan's at work, I said, moving to close the door. You can reach him at the office. I know exactly where Ryan is. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times. He's at the Riverside Hotel, room 412, same as every Tuesday afternoon for the past 8 months. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the doorframe harder, my knuckles turning white. I think you should leave. Look. She held up her phone. The screen showed Ryan, my Ryan, kissing this woman in what looked like a restaurant. Another swipe. Them on a beach, his arm around her waist. Another, in bed, his face peaceful in sleep, the same expression I'd watched countless mornings. Stop. The word came out like a plea. I'm not here to hurt you, Sophie said, lowering her phone. I thought I was the only one until last week. Then I found out about you, about Dylan, about the mortgage payments he's been making on my condo while telling me he was separated. The smell of burning cheese suddenly filled the air. The lasagna. I turned mechanically toward the kitchen, Sophie following me inside uninvited. I pulled out the slightly blackened dish, set it on the counter. The mundane action felt surreal, like I was moving through water. Why are you here? I asked, still staring at the ruined dinner. Why tell me? Because we both deserve better than his lies. She placed a manila envelope on my counter. Here's everything. Photos, messages, bank statements, hotel receipts. Use it however you want. A cry from upstairs made us both freeze. Dylan, awake from his nap? The sound snapped me back to reality, reminded me who I was, who I needed to be. Get out, I said, my voice finding its strength. Now, Sophie nodded, almost sympathetic. One more thing. He's planning to leave you next month. Already has the papers drawn up. I thought you should know. She walked out, heels clicking against my hardwood floors. The front door closed with a soft click that echoed through my suddenly hollow home. Upstairs, Dylan called again. Mama. I looked at the envelope on my counter, then at my wedding photo hanging on the wall. Ryan's smile, the one I'd fallen in love with, now seemed more like a smirk. 8 years of marriage reduced to a manila envelope of betrayals. Dylan's cries grew more insistent. I touched my wedding ring, twisted it once, then pulled it off. It made a small, final sound as it hit the counter. Coming, baby. I called upstairs, my mind already racing with what needed to be done. Ryan would be home in 3 hours, expecting his perfect family, his perfect life. He had no idea what was waiting for him. I spent 3 hours memorizing every detail in that manila envelope, arranging the evidence of my shattered life on our bedroom floor while Dylan played with his blocks nearby. Each photo, each receipt, each loving message between my husband and his other life felt like another nail in a coffin I hadn't known I was lying in. When Ryan's key turned in the front door at exactly 6:30, I had everything back in the envelope, tucked safely in my mother's house across town. Dylan squealed, "Dada," from his playpen, and I watched Ryan scoop him up, plant kisses on his chubby cheeks, perform his role of devoted father perfectly. Something smells good, he said, walking into the kitchen where I stood at the counter, chopping vegetables with mechanical precision. New recipe? How was the Riverside Hotel? I kept chopping, not looking up. Room 412 meet your standards? The silence that followed was absolute. Even Dylan, still in Ryan's arms, seemed to sense the shift in the air. When I finally looked up, Ryan's face had that careful blank expression I'd seen him use with difficult clients. Michelle, what are you talking about? Don't. The knife came down harder than necessary, splitting a carrot in two. Sophie Grant was here today. Interesting woman. Great taste in blazers, even better taste in evidence. Ryan set Dylan down, who immediately toddled off to his toys. Whatever she told you. 8 months. My voice cracked slightly. Every Tuesday afternoon. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Or did you just not care enough to hide it better? It's not what you think. He stepped closer, reaching for my hand. I pointed the knife at him and he froze. Baby, please, let me explain. Explain what? The condo you're paying for? The divorce papers you've already drawn up? Each word felt like glass in my throat. Or maybe explain how you've been playing house with her son while ours naps every afternoon? His face changed then, something darker replacing the careful mask. You went through my things? I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. No, Ryan. Sophie did that for me. Turns out she didn't appreciate finding out about your wife and son any more than I appreciated learning about your girlfriend and her kid. This is exactly why He caught himself, but not before I saw it. That flash of blame in his eyes. Why you what? Why you decided to throw away 8 years of marriage? Why you've been lying to my face every single day. I set the knife down before the temptation to use it became too strong. Go ahead. Finish that sentence. Instead, he pulled out his phone, turning away slightly. I caught a glimpse of Sophie's name on the screen before he walked into the living room, speaking in low, urgent tones. I followed, fury building with each step. Are you seriously calling her right now? He held up a finger, the universal wait gesture he used to silence difficult clients. That's when something in me snapped. I grabbed his phone and hurled it against the wall. It shattered, pieces of screen scattering across our perfect hardwood floors. Dylan started crying from his playpen, but for once I didn't immediately run to comfort him. Jesus Christ, Michelle. Ryan stared at his broken phone, then at me like I was a stranger. Have you lost your mind? No, I said, eerily calm now. But I found something better. Clarity. I walked to Dylan's playpen, lifted him out, and headed for the stairs. We're staying at my mother's tonight. Don't bother calling. Oh, wait, you can't. Michelle, stop. We need to talk about this like adults. I turned on the stairs, Dylan's tear-stained face pressed against my neck. Adults? Like how you've been adulting with Sophie every Tuesday? Or how adult it was to plan your escape while playing Happy Family? I never meant, save it for your girlfriend. I continued up the stairs. Or better yet, save it for your lawyer, because that's who you'll be talking to from now on. His voice followed me up. You're being hysterical. This isn't you. You're right, I called back, throwing some of Dylan's things into a bag. The old me would have believed whatever lie you're about to tell. But that Michelle? She died today in room 412. Lily's office always smelled like leather and coffee, a combination that usually calmed me. Not today. I sat across from her desk, Dylan asleep in his stroller beside me while she scrolled through Ryan's financial records on her computer screen. This is worse than we thought, she said, turning the monitor toward me. He's been moving money around for months. Small amounts at first, then larger transfers starting about 6 months ago. I leaned forward, the numbers swimming before my eyes. How much? Nearly $200,000. Lily's voice hardened. All going to an account under Sophie Grant's name. The room tilted slightly. That was our safety net. Our future. Dylan's college fund. He told me the market was down, that our investments needed time to recover. The market's fine. Your husband's morality, however. Lily started typing rapidly. There's more. The condo he bought for her? It's in both their names. A knock at the door made us both jump. Mark Davis, Ryan's best friend, stepped in without waiting for an answer. The sight of him in his expensive suit, with that familiar apologetic smile, made my stomach turn. Michelle, he said, closing the door behind him. Ryan's worried sick. He's been trying to reach you for days. I'm in a private meeting with my lawyer, I said, gesturing to Lily. You can tell Ryan. He's not the bad guy here. Mark held up his hands. Look, Sophie's been causing problems for months. Ryan was trying to handle it quietly, protect everyone involved. Lily stood up slowly. Mark, as Michelle's legal counsel, I advise you to leave. Did Ryan send you to spy on me? The question came out sharp enough to make Dylan stir in his sleep. Or did you volunteer? Mark's expression shifted, something calculating replacing the concern. You should know there are things about Sophie that would change how you see this situation. Like what? That she has a son? That Ryan's been playing daddy to him while stealing from his own child's future? I pulled out my phone, showed him the photo of Ryan with Sophie and her son at what looked like a school event. Or maybe you mean how he's been building a whole second life while destroying this one. That money was to keep her quiet. Mark blurted. She was threatening to go public, ruin his career. Ryan was protecting you. Lily's laugh was cold. By buying her a condo and setting up joint accounts, that's an interesting definition of protection. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. I stood up, my voice steady despite the rage burning through me. Ryan wasn't protecting anyone but himself. And you've been helping him, haven't you? Covering for him at those business dinners? Lying to my face every time I called looking for him? Mark's silence was answer enough. "Get out," Lily said, moving between us. "Before I call security." After he left, I collapsed back into the chair, my hands shaking. Ryan's already spinning his version of events. Let him. Lily returned to her computer. Because while he's doing that, we're going to follow the money. Every transfer, every purchase, every lie he tried to hide. She paused, looking at me carefully. But Michelle, once we start this, there's no going back. Ryan won't just lose his reputation, he could face serious legal consequences. I looked at Dylan, peaceful in his sleep, unaware that his world was crumbling. Then I thought of Tom, Sophie's son, another innocent caught in Ryan's web of lies. The fury that had been building since Sophie's visit crystallized into something colder, more focused. Ryan's been playing both sides, thinking he's too smart to get caught, I said, turning back to Lily. He used our money to build his perfect escape, convinced everyone to help keep his secrets. Now it's my turn. What are you thinking? I pulled out the manila envelope Sophie had given me, along with a USB drive I'd found hidden in Ryan's office. I'm thinking it's time to show him what it feels like when everything you've built comes crashing down. Lily smiled, a predatory gleam in her eye. Then let's get to work. My mother found me in her guest bathroom at 3 a.m, scrubbing the already spotless tiles with violent determination. She didn't say anything, just sat on the edge of the tub and waited. The only sounds were Dylan's soft breathing through the baby monitor and the harsh scratch of the brush against ceramic. I keep thinking about all the times I cleaned our house while he was with her. I finally said, my knuckles white around the brush handle. Every surface I made perfect for him to come home to. Michelle. Mom's voice was gentle, but I heard the steel underneath. Put down the brush. I did, but my hands kept moving, searching for something to fix, to control. Did you know Ryan called the school today? Tried to convince them to let him substitute teach your old literature class? What? The steel in her voice became razor sharp. He's trying to preserve his image, the caring husband, the devoted father, the pillar of the community. I laughed, the sound echoing harshly off the bathroom walls. He even volunteered to coach Little League. That manipulative little... A knock at the front door cut her off. We both froze, listening. It was followed by another knock, more insistent. Stay here, Mom said, but I was already moving. Through the peephole, I saw Sophie, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd appeared on my doorstep days ago. Her mascara was smeared, her perfect hair disheveled. I opened the door. It's 3 a.m. Ryan's engaged. The words tumbled out of her. To neither of us. Her name's Amanda. They've been together for months. The world didn't tilt this time. It shattered. What? Sophie thrust her phone at me. On the screen was a private Instagram account showing Ryan at what looked like an intimate dinner. His arm was around a redhead I'd never seen before. The caption read, "Finally said yes to forever. Jiri's engaged. My forever." The post is from 2 hours ago, Sophie said. I only found it because her best friend follows my yoga studio's account. My mother appeared beside me, taking in Sophie's desperate state. Come inside before the neighbors start talking. In the kitchen, Sophie's hands shook as she pulled up more photos. Ryan and Amanda at Christmas. Ryan and Amanda on vacation. Ryan and Amanda looking at houses. He told me you were the obstacle, Sophie said, her voice breaking. That once the divorce was final, we could be together properly. But he told her I was just a client who got obsessed with him. And you... She looked at me. You don't even exist in her world. How long? The question felt like ground glass in my throat. The timestamps on these photos. Sophie scrolled through her phone. At least a year, before he even met me. My mother's hand found mine under the table, squeezing hard. You said she's looking at houses with him? Sophie nodded. In the same development where he bought my condo, using the same real estate company, suddenly everything clicked into place. The missing money, the elaborate lies, the careful compartmentalization of his various lives. It wasn't just about affairs or escape plans. "He's been running a scam," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "The development, the real estate company. He's been using his relationships to sell properties, hasn't he?" Sophie's eyes widened. "The investment opportunity he kept talking about. He said if I just put in a little more money." "How much?" Mom asked sharply. "Everything I had." Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. "My savings, my son's college fund, even a second mortgage on my parents' house." The baby monitor crackled with Dylan's soft whimpers. The sound crystallized everything. My rage, my pain, my purpose. "We need to call Lily," I said, standing up. "Right now." "Why?" Sophie asked. "Because this isn't about affairs anymore. It's about fraud." I looked at the photos again, at Ryan's practice smile, the same one he'd used on all of us. "And we're going to make sure he never does this to anyone else." The sun was rising by the time we finished making our plans, painting the kitchen in shades of gold that felt like a promise. Or maybe a warning. The restaurant buzzed with Friday night energy as I watched Ryan charm his way through another business dinner. He hadn't noticed me yet, sitting alone at the corner table, nursing a glass of wine I hadn't touched. His arm was around Amanda, the ring on her finger catching the light as she laughed at something he'd said. 3 other couples sat at their table. All potential buyers for the new development, according to Lily's investigation. All about to invest their life savings in Ryan's elaborate house of cards. My phone vibrated. "Sophie." "We're in position. Mark just arrived at the office." I checked my watch. Right on schedule. While Ryan played his role here, Lily and a forensic accountant were meeting Mark at the real estate office, armed with enough evidence to make him choose between loyalty to Ryan and saving his own skin. "Ready?" Another text, this time from Mom, who was watching Dylan. I typed back, "Yes." Standing up, I smoothed down my black dress, the one Ryan had always loved, and walked toward their table. Amanda saw me first, her smile faltering as she tried to place my face. Then Ryan looked up, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw real fear in his eyes. "Ryan, darling," I said, loud enough to carry. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your fiancé?" The table went silent. Amanda's hand flew to her throat, touching the necklace I recognized from our 10th anniversary. "Ryan, who is this?" "Nobody," he said quickly, standing. "Michelle, let's talk outside." "I'm his wife," I said, pulling out my phone. "Well, current wife, though I suppose that makes me the nobody in this scenario." I turned to the other couples. "I assume you're all here about investing in Riverside Heights?" Ryan grabbed my arm. "Stop this. Now." I shook him off. "You might want to check the news first. It seems there are some irregularities with the development company. The FBI is particularly interested in the pattern of investment fraud." "She's lying," Ryan said, but the couples were already pulling out their phones. "This is just a domestic dispute." My phone rang. I answered on speaker. "Yes, Lily?" "It's done." My lawyer's voice rang clear. "Mark Davis just finished his statement to the investigators. They're executing the search warrant now." The color drained from Ryan's face. Amanda stood up, backing away from him. "Ryan, what's happening?" "Would you like to tell her?" I asked him. "Or should I? About Sophie, perhaps? Or the other women? The houses you sold them with money that never went to the development?" I turned to Amanda. "Check your investment account. The one he convinced you to create for your future together. I'm betting it's empty." She fumbled with her phone, hands shaking. The horror dawning on her face told me everything. "You're ruining everything," Ryan hissed, his charm cracking to reveal something ugly underneath. "No, you did that yourself. I'm just making sure you can't ruin anyone else's life." The restaurant manager appeared, drawn by the commotion. Behind him, I spotted 2 men in suits entering, right on schedule. "Mr. Thompson?" one called out. "FBI, we need you to come with us." Ryan's eyes darted around like a trapped animal's. For a moment, I thought he might run. Instead, he straightened his tie, that familiar mask sliding back into place. "This is all a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "I can explain everything." As they led him away, Amanda threw her ring at him, the diamond bouncing off his perfectly pressed shirt. The other couples huddled together, shock and anger mixing on their faces as they realized how close they'd come to losing everything. I sat back down at my corner table, finally taking a sip of my wine. My phone lit up with a message from Sophie. "Is it done?" "Yes," I typed back. "He'll never hurt anyone again." The wine tasted bitter, victory mixing with something else. Not regret exactly, but a hollow feeling where satisfaction should have been. I thought it would feel different watching him fall. Instead, I just felt tired. My phone buzzed again. Mom had sent a photo of Dylan sleeping, clutching his favorite stuffed elephant. That's when the tears finally came. Not for Ryan, or the life we'd lost, but for the future we'd saved. The courthouse hallway felt endless as I walked toward the hearing room, my heels echoing against marble floors. Behind me, I heard the whispers, felt the stares. Ryan's arrest had made headlines, and now everyone knew the story. Or thought they did. I pushed open the heavy doors, and there he sat, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of his usual designer suit. The sight should have been satisfying. Instead, it made my stomach turn. "Mrs. Thompson," his lawyer called out, intercepting me before I could sit down. A moment, in the corner, Ryan watched us with that familiar, calculating expression. I'd seen that look before, when negotiating house prices, when convincing clients to invest, when promising Sophie and Amanda their perfect futures. "We have a proposition," the lawyer said quietly. "One that could benefit everyone." Everyone meaning Ryan? Meaning Dylan. He paused, letting that sink in. "My client is willing to sign over all his assets, make a full confession, if you agree to supervised visitation." The room tilted slightly. "He's using our son as a bargaining chip?" "He's trying to make things right." A commotion at the door drew our attention. Sophie burst in, her face pale. "Michelle, wait. There's something you need to know." The lawyer tried to intervene, but Sophie pushed past him. "He's done it before. In Seattle, 5 years ago. Different names, different development, same scheme." Her voice cracked. "A woman killed herself when she lost everything. Her daughter was Tom's age." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I looked at Ryan, searching for any sign of remorse, any crack in his perfect mask. He just smiled. That same charming smile that had convinced me, convinced all of us, that he was something he never was. "Your Honor," his lawyer started, but I cut him off. "No deals." My voice sounded strange, distant. "No visitation, no mercy," Ryan finally spoke, his voice carrying across the room. "You're going to tell our son his father's in prison? That's your idea of protecting him? Better than letting him grow up thinking lies are love." I turned to the judge. "I'd like to make a statement." But before I could speak, Mark Davis burst into the courtroom, clutching papers. "Stop. Everything he told you about Seattle was a lie. There's more, so much more." The next hour passed in a blur of revelations. 3 cities, dozens of victims, millions stolen. With each new detail, I felt myself shrinking, drowning in the magnitude of what Ryan had done, what I had failed to see. Later, in the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the horror of it all. The door opened and Amanda stepped in, her engagement ring gone. "I thought I knew him," she said quietly. We all did. That was his gift. My reflection looked haunted, hollow, making us see what we wanted to see. "The investigators found something else," Amanda said. "In his private email, plans for after the arrest, for Dylan." My heart stopped. "What plans?" "He has money hidden overseas, and people willing to—" She couldn't finish. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Ryan wasn't just trying to negotiate visitation. He was setting up an escape plan, with our son as leverage. I fumbled for my phone, called my mother. No answer. Called home. Nothing. "Dylan's at daycare," Amanda said quickly, seeing my panic. I checked before coming here. He's safe. But for how long? The question echoed in my head as I ran from the courthouse, my carefully planned revenge crumbling around me. I'd thought exposing Ryan would end this. Instead, I'd just given him nothing left to lose. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have taken the deal. In that moment, standing in the courthouse parking lot with my world collapsing again, I realized the true cost of revenge. It wasn't just about exposing lies or seeking justice anymore. It was about protecting what mattered most, and I just made that infinitely harder. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, the stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined. The safe house felt like a cage, even with the FBI agents posted outside. Dylan slept in the next room while I paced, watching shadows move across unfamiliar walls. 3 days since Ryan's threat. 3 days of protective custody, waiting for the other shoe to drop. My phone buzzed. A text from an encrypted number Lily had set up. Movement on the offshore accounts. Large withdrawal in Singapore. Another buzz. Security breach at the courthouse. Ryan's gone. The bedroom door creaked. I spun around, heart racing, but it was just Sophie, her face ghost white in the darkness. They found Mark, she whispered, in his car. He's alive, but... A crash from Dylan's room cut her off. Before I could move, the window exploded inward and 2 figures in black burst through. I lunged for Dylan's room, but strong arms caught me from behind. Hello, Michelle? Ryan's voice, smooth as ever. Miss me? The overhead lights flickered on. Ryan stood in the doorway wearing a guard's uniform, his perfect mask finally cracked around the edges. 2 men held Sophie against the wall. Through the broken window, I saw the FBI agent slumped on the ground. Dylan stays asleep, Ryan said quietly. Or this gets messy. How did you... Money talks, especially to underpaid federal agents. He stepped closer, that familiar smile twisting into something cruel. You should have taken the deal. You're not taking him. My voice stayed steady, even as fear clawed at my throat. Actually, I am. But first, he pulled out a stack of papers. You're going to sign these. Full custody, no visitation, no contact. Your choice whether Dylan grows up thinking his mother abandoned him or died trying to stop me. Sophie made a small sound, and one of the men pressed harder against her throat. You really think you can disappear? I asked, playing for time. Every law enforcement agency in the country? We'll be chasing shadows while we're living comfortably in a country with no extradition treaty. Ryan's eyes flickered to Dylan's room. He'll forget you eventually. Children are adaptable. Something inside me shifted, a clarity cutting through the fear. I saw Ryan clearly for the first time. Not the charming mask or the calculating monster, but something smaller, desperate. You know what your mistake was? I asked, taking a step forward. Not the affairs or the fraud or even the threats. It was thinking you knew me. His smile faltered slightly. The old Michelle would have been paralyzed by fear right now. Would have signed anything to keep the peace. Another step. But you created this version of me. The one who learned to play the long game. A sound outside. Car doors closing. Ryan's head turned slightly. You taught me how to set a trap. I continued. How to make someone so focused on one threat they miss the real danger. Shouts erupted outside. Ryan's men moved toward the window, dragging Sophie with them. The offshore accounts? I smiled. A trail we wanted you to follow. The courthouse breach? Staged. Even the FBI agents outside were actors. The real team's been waiting for my signal since you walked in. The door burst open. Real agents poured in, weapons raised. Ryan lunged for Dylan's room, but I was already there, blocking his path. You're right about one thing, I said as they took him down. Children are adaptable. Dylan will forget you. And that's the best gift I could give him. Later, as dawn broke over the safe house, I sat with Sophie while the FBI processed the scene. How did you know he'd come himself? She asked. Because he couldn't stand that someone else had outplayed him. His ego wouldn't let him trust anyone else to fix it. Dylan stirred in his sleep, clutching his stuffed elephant. I touched the small transmitter hidden inside it, the one that had been broadcasting everything to the FBI since Ryan's first threat. "The thing about revenge," I said quietly, "is knowing when to let it go. Sometimes the best victory is just making sure they can never hurt anyone again." Sophie nodded, understanding in her eyes. "What now?" I watched the sun rise, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Now we rebuild, but this time on our terms, not his." The envelope arrived on a crisp autumn morning, just as Dylan was mastering his first complete sentence. I recognized Sophie's handwriting immediately, though I hadn't heard from her since the trial. "Mama, look." Dylan pointed at a falling leaf while I opened the letter, his other hand gripping the playground railing. The park had become our sanctuary, a place where the whispers and stares couldn't reach us. Sophie's words blurred on the page. "I'm moving to Seattle with Tom. Starting over where Ryan first began his schemes feels right somehow, like closing a circle. The victims' families there. They deserve to know the truth. To heal." A child's laughter drew my attention. Tom was pushing Dylan on the swing, both boys oblivious to the weight of their shared history. Sophie had brought him for one last play date before their move. "They'll forget," Sophie said, appearing beside me. "That's what everyone keeps telling me. That Tom will forget Ryan, the promises, the pain." "But we won't," I replied, watching our sons play. "No." She handed me a newspaper clipping, Ryan's sentencing. 20 years, no possibility of early release. I heard he tried to charm the judge at the end. Some speech about redemption. Old habits. I folded the clipping without reading it. Did it work? The judge called him a predator in a prince's clothing. Sophie smiled slightly. "Your testimony sealed it. The way you described his methods, his manipulation, it helped the other victims come forward." Dylan ran over, leaves stuck in his curls. "Mama, swing." As I pushed him higher, I thought about Ryan's last words to me in court. "You'll never truly be free of me." He'd meant it as a threat, but watching Dylan laugh, fearless and pure, I realized Ryan had given me something he never intended. Strength I never knew I had. "The support group is helping," Sophie said when I returned. "The other families, they understand. No judgment. Just healing." "Is that why you're really going to Seattle?" She nodded. "They need someone who understands both sides, victim and accomplice." Her voice caught. "I have to make it right." Tom called out to her, proud of something he'd found. The way she looked at him, fierce love mixed with lingering guilt, mirrored what I felt every time Dylan asked about his father. "We protected them in the end," I said. "That's what matters." "You protected everyone. I just wish—" She trailed off, watching Tom. "I wish I'd been stronger sooner." I thought about the day Sophie first appeared on my doorstep, how that moment had shattered my world and ultimately rebuilt it stronger. We were strong exactly when we needed to be. Later, after they'd left for their new life across the country, I found a second letter in the envelope. This one was addressed to Dylan, marked, "For when he's older." I didn't read it. Instead, I placed it in the box where I kept the important things: Dylan's first drawing, the key to our new house, the business card for my recently launched consulting firm. Not to preserve the pain, but to remember the strength that grew from it. Dylan tugged at my sleeve, ready for his afternoon nap. As I carried him home, he pointed at a bird soaring overhead. "Free," he said, one of his new favorite words. I held him closer, thinking about Ryan's threat of never being free. He'd been wrong about that, just like he'd been wrong about so many things. Freedom wasn't about forgetting the past or even forgiving it. It was about choosing your own path forward, even when that path was harder than the comfortable lies we tell ourselves. "Yes, baby," I whispered to Dylan as he drifted off to sleep. "We're free." And for the first time since this all began, I truly believed it.